So Loopback is a platform for building APIs and microservices in Node.js. If you have already built REST APIs with Express.js or any other frameworks, you can do the exact same approach. You can build the exact same APIs with Loopback. It's an open source framework. Basically, it is built based on Express.js. So you can build microservices and REST services. Here you can see the complete diagram. You can define API endpoints. Here you will see the API and microservices creation, tooling, platform developer, and integration with IT infrastructure, and something like that. It sounds confusing for you, but I'll teach you how to build APIs with Loopback. If you are an API developer, then you should use the Loopback. If you are using Node.js, I would recommend you to use Loopback. You have to define your API endpoints, and you will define schemas in the OpenAPI format. But the big advantage is that you can use async await. It also supports Typescript. You can write your Node.js code in Typescript. It is also good for teams. If you are working 3 to 5 or 5 to 10 developers, then you can use Loopback. Loopback also works with themes. You can see that first class support for Typescript. It also provides you some ready-made starter kit project, so you can use from this starter kit project. You don't need to add manual setting for Typescript support. Everything will be set up for you. You can integrate with web services. Obviously, it provides some data sources. You can interact with MongoDB, MySQL. You can also build your own reusable library. So this is the complete basic general overview of the Loopback. The difference between Loopback 3 and Loopback 4. Loopback 4 supports GraphQL. GraphQL support, you can write some GraphQL queries, and Loopback 4 is written in TypeScript. TypeScript is the future of JavaScript. In this video, I'm going to create our first Loopback project. Make sure you have installed Node.js on your machine. If you're using Mac, you need to add the sudo keyword, and you have to install the Loopback CLI. npm install I -g. I have to install Loopback globally on our machine, and here is the Loopback CLI package. I have already installed Loopback CLI on my machine. Now it's time to create the Loopback project. You gotta use the lb4, and you need to write the name of your application. I'm gonna write lb4, the name of our application. Now it's time to create our first Loopback project. You gotta execute this command lb4, and you need to write the app. It is going to ask me the project name. I'm gonna use lb production. You can use any name. You can define some description. You can define root directory. I'm gonna use lb-product. Let's provide the name of our class, starter application. By default, Loopback will provide me ESLint integration, Prettier, Mocha, Loopback build, Docker support, or repositories. I'm going to press enter. Now it is going to install some dependencies. all these dependencies have installed. I'm going to navigate to my project. Let me start the project by using the npm start. Now you can see that our application is running. You can see the OpenAPI specification, OpenAPI.json. You can also view the API Explorer. I'm going to try it out and you will see the ping. You can see the response here by executing this endpoint. It has already created this endpoint, localhost colon 3000/ping. Okay, now it's time to open the project into VS Code. You can view the source code. You can see the Docker setup, Docker ignore, ESLint, Mocha, npm-rc, Docker file. I'm not going to tell you the details about Docker. We'll talk more about the Docker in the later videos. This is our index.ts. This is the entry file. All the source code is available inside the source directory. Let me show you what is inside the source directory. You can see the test folder, acceptance test. I'm not going to talk about the test cases yet. Here you will see the controllers. You can see the ping controller. Let's review the source code from the ping controller. Ping response, because it is built on the top of the Typescript, you will see the Typescript. This is the OpenAPI response. You basically specify the response type. This is our description. You can see that. Let me show you. You can see the description, ping by response, ping response. They have defined these properties: greeting, date, URL, and the headers. You can view that: greetings, date, URL, and the headers. I'll teach you how to write this schema. And here is our ping controller class. They are using the decorator, Typescript decorator, injecting the REST binding. I'll talk more about what is this inject, what is the REST bindings, and what is the request. They have created this get endpoint. This is how you will create the get endpoint in Loopback. And it is going to return this message, hello from Loopback. You can update the message. This is going to return the current date. So this is our response. We have defined the exact response here. Basically, we defined the properties for the schema. Now you can return these properties: date, URL, and the headers. I'm going to execute that. Now you can see that. You can see the result. It is going to give him the fail to fetch. I think I did not start the application. npm start. Now my application is running. Now you can see the response body: host, connection, accept, user agent, and these you can see the greeting property. I have updated the text. You can see the date and the URL. So this is our controller. You can view the data sources. I'll teach you what are data sources, models, and repository. This is our starter application. It is going to set up the sequence, static file, or Explorer, API Explorer path, controllers directory. I'll teach you more about the sequence, migrate, all this stuff. You don't need to worry about these stuff. Don't get overwhelmed. I'm going to teach you everything. So it's time to let's try to create our first controller. You can write the name of the controller hello. I need the empty controller, so I'm gonna press enter. Hello was created. You can view the controllers here. You can create some endpoint by using the get endpoint. Make sure you have imported the get method from this one. This is the annotation from the Loopback REST package. You have to define the path. I'm gonna use hello. It is an annotation function. So we have to define the return type, which is string. So I'm gonna return the message hello from Loopback 4. Now you will see the hello endpoint will be created. I'm gonna start the application. My application is running, but I did not specify the API documentation. Here you will see I did not specify the response object, but I'll teach you how to do that. Let's try to test our endpoint. Localhost 3000. I'm gonna navigate to the hello. Cool. You will see the message hello from Loopback 4. Let's talk about Loopback 4 model. A model describes the business domain objects. For example, customer, address, and the order. If you are building the blogging type application, the post category will be your models. A model describes the shape of the data. You will specify the ID properties of the model. Like in address model, you will have street number, zip code, and the city. Behavior like CRUD operation is added by repositories. Loopback created a separate package for repository, and you will inject your repository into your controller function, and this repository provide CRUD operation. We'll talk more about repository in later videos. There are two types of model for domain objects. The first one is value object, a domain object that does not have an identity, which is ID. The address is the perfect use case. Let's say we have an address model and we have properties: street number, street name, city, zip code. But you can notice that I did not define the ID for the address model. I'm gonna embed this address model into another model. The second type of model for domain object is entity model. And this domain object has an identity, which is ID. You can see that we have person model. We have ID property, last name, first name, email, and the address. I have embedded the address. In the next video, I'll show you how to create your first loopback model. We're going to create our first loopback model. I'm going to create the product model. A persistent model with ID. Yes, I would like to save the data in this product model and it will have a unique ID. I have selected the entity. I'm going to press enter, allow additional freeform properties. You can choose no. Here I need to write the name of the property. The first property, I would like to have the ID. The type of the ID is number. Yes. Is ID is the ID property? Yes. Is it required? Yes. I'm gonna press enter. I don't have any default value. Now it's time to add another property. Title of the product. The type is string. Yes, it is required. I don't have any default value. I'm gonna press enter. The third property, which is QTY, the type is number. Yes, it is required. I don't have any default value. You can also add the price. The type is number. Yeah, it is not required. So I'm gonna press no, N. I don't have any default value. I have created all these properties. If you will press the enter, now you can see that the model has created. And you will see the product model, and it has added the entry inside the index.ts. Now you will see the product model in the index.ts. You can see that we have model decorator and we have property decorator. Type is number, ID true, required. And we have title, the type is string. We have QTY, we have price, we have constructor. This question mark means it's an optional. It's an optional. You can see that the price is optional. And I believe this is an interface, the type of this partial interface, which is product. And it is going to export the product relation, and it is also going to export this type, product with relation. You can learn more about this model decorator and property decorator. I have downloaded the source code from the GitHub. This is the Loopback next. You can find the official source code from the GitHub repository. When you open the repository, you will see the decorator. I have opened the model decorator. Here they have created the class decorator. You can see that it's a function and it is going to return the factory function. This is a class-based decorator, so that's why the type is function. And they are going to generate some model definition. This is the class decorator factory.create decorator. It is going to provide the model key and the definition. And finally, they will generate the model definition. Similarly, we will have the property decorator. It is going to return the factory function, create decorator, and this is the property decorator. Now we are going to talk about the data sources. And data sources are loopback ways of connecting to various sources of database, such as database. If you would like to connect your loopback application to MongoDB or MySQL or MariaDB, you have to use the data source. This data source provides the loopback juggler connector. You have to use that connector. You can use loopback for CLI to create a data source. I'm going to use this command lb4 data source. It is going to ask you the name of your data source. I'm going to choose DB. These are all the databases: in-memory DB, IBM DB2, you can see that, CouchDB, Cassandra, Redis, MySQL, MongoDB. But for this case, I'm going to use in-memory DB, which is supported by a strong loopback. In-memory DB, which is built it here, you will create the JSON file and you will store all the data. In-memory DB is good for testing only. I'm going to press enter. Full path to file for the persistence. Where do I want to save my data? We will create the db.json file inside the data folder. Awesome. Now you can see that data sources folder. Inside the data sources folder, you will see the db.json file. Let me show you. db.datasource.json file, db.datasource.ts. We have the index.ts. You will place all your data sources inside this folder. Let's create a new folder inside the root directory. I'm going to create a new folder, data. Here we need to have db.json file. Because we have specified the db.json file. Let's review the db.datasource.json, the name of the data source, which is db. And I'm going to use in-memory connector. You will see the file path. Inside the Typescript file, I'm extending the data source, which is juggler. Loopback provides this connector. You will see the static property. Here they are using the dependency injection pattern. It's a design pattern. If you have worked with Angular, this is the way you will inject services in your project. I'll talk more about the dependency injection in the later videos. You will see it is going to get the config from this file. It has placed this configuration object. This is the decorator, property decorator. So we have created our data source, but how can you create the CRUD operation? For that, we need to have repository. Now it's time to create our repository. If you have worked with Loopback 3, you have noticed all these CRUD operations will be available on the model class. But in Loopback 4, they have created a separate service class, which is repository. It's a service. It provides the CRUD operation for your domain model. You can create a new repository by using this Loopback 4 CLI. Yes, the data source, which is db data source. We created this data source in the previous video. I need to select the model, which is product. I've selected the product model. Yes, I want default CRUD repository. Oops, I did not select the right model. Please press space to select. Let's do that again. I'm gonna press play. Yeah, space. You have to press the space on your laptop. Now you can see that it is going to select the default CRUD repository. Awesome. A new repository has created. This product repository will provide the CRUD operation like create record, delete record, find all, or find one. It is using this class default CRUD repository. And you can see that this is the generic class. You can provide it has 3 types like DUV, something like that. It could be DUV. Product, this default CRUD repository can use these 3 types: product, or type of product.prototype.id, and product relation. And they have used this dependency injection. This product repository is going to use this db data source, which is our in-memory data source. It is going to provide the CRUD operation for this in-memory data source for this product model. It is going to call this super constructor by passing the product and the data source. But where do we define our REST API endpoints? we have to use the controller function. Basically, we need a controller file. I did not create any controller yet. In the next video, I'll talk more about the controllers. Now we are going to define our REST API endpoints. We will use controller to define our application logic. This controller function will be a bridge between HTTP REST API and your domain model. These controllers will handle the request and response cycle for your API. You will define what type of response you want to send when user has sent request to specific endpoint. Yes, each function on a controller can be individually to handle an incoming request, like post request. You can write some business logic inside your handler function and you can return response. If request has successfully executed, then you can return 200 response. We don't have any product controller. I'm going to show you how to create the product controller. Before I need a controller. We need to provide the name of the controller base class. Basically, it's not a base class, it's a name of the class. I'm going to use product. Yes, we need REST API endpoints. That's why I'm going to provide the REST controller with CRUD functions. Yes, the name of the model, which is product. We need product repository. Yes, because this product repository has CRUD related functions: create, read, find, and find all. The type of the ID, I think we defined the number type. What is the base HTTP path name of the CRUD operations, which is products. So I'm going to press products. Actually, I don't need to press anything. I'm going to press enter. That is it. Let me show you the controllers folder and you will see the product.controller. In the index.js, they have exported this product controller. I'm going to open the product controller. Now you can see that they have created the REST package. You can see get, post, patch, put, delete, and request body. They have imported these methods from the Loopback REST package. They have injected this repository. This is called property decorator. Here you will see the create method decorator. You can see that you will define the path, which is products. Here you will define your response. If everything is good, it is going to return this JSON response with newly created product. And you can see that this is the parameter decorator. You can send the product from the request body and it is going to return the promise with product. Hey, here we have the product repository. Remember that I told you product repository will provide the CRUD operations. This is a service. You can assume that this is the service and it is going to return it is going to give me some methods to perform CRUD operations. We have create method and they are using the async await. If promise will be resolved, it is going to return the result. Now it's time to run the project. npm start. The application is running. I have to go to the localhost :3000. I need to show you the API Explorer. And you can see that we have the API or the REST endpoints for our product controller. First of all, I would like to create a new product. I'm going to use tryout. I have to specify the ID. Let's say I'm going to use the for learn Node.js, QTY, which is 1. Price, we need to specify the price. Let me update the ID. I'm going to provide 1. So you can send the request by pressing this execute button. Awesome. A new product has created. You can see that when you open the db.json file, you will see the product. And you can see that IDs, we have an IDs object. We have 2 products. Like this is the maximum ID. You can say that. If I will add a new product, now you will see the here 3. So let's try to add a new product. I'm going to provide 2. Oops, we need to change the name. It could be, let's say, MacBook. I'm going to provide QTY, which is 2034. We also need to specify the price. A new product has created. Now you can see that the ID, which is 3, and you will have 2 products. It's time to find all the products. You can count that. You can see that we have 2 products. You can also get the product only based on ID. So I'm going to provide the ID here. Let's say I would like to get the record with ID number 2. You can see that we have found that. Now it's time to test the patch method. I would like to update the name for the first product. I would like to replace the learn Node.js to iPhone. ID, which is 1. I don't need to update anything here. I just need to update the title. Let's say iPhone X. iPhone X, you can see that it is updated. Now we are going to dig into the repository. Let's try to review the source code for default CRUD repository. I have already downloaded the source code of the Loopback project. When you see the Loopback repository package, you can see that these are all the packages. Loopback created a separate package for authentication, boot, build, context, code. I'm going to show you what is inside the repository package. You can see a lot of examples here. You can play around with this example. Let's say we have a customer repository, but I'm interested in, first of all, I'm going to open the index.ts file from the repository. This is our index.ts. You can see that Loopback repository package has connector, decorators, errors, mixins, and repositories. Let's try to check the model class. We have the model class. You can see the property form. This is the model definition. You can also review the query.ts file. Here you can see that we have the query object. It's a filter object, query filter object. You can query only based on where, fields, order, limit, skip, offset, and include. So I'm going to try to test this limit field. When you try to fetch all the products, you can write the query object here. I'm gonna set the limit, which is 1. Now you can see, you can view only one product here. You can write filters based on these conditions, greater at, equal, something like that. Now I would like to show you some model method. You have to open the legacy juggler bridge. Here you will find all your methods like create, find all, find by IDs. We have the class default CRUD repository, which is our T. In our case, we have the product. The type should be ID. This one is the ID, and here we have the relation. It is going to implement the entity CRUD repository. You will see the model class. What is happening when you try to call the create method? I would like to show you that. Here we have the create method. It is just going to create a new record in the model. And it is going to save this record, and it is going to find all the records from the model class. This model class has all these methods. We can review this model class. It is juggler.persisted model class instance. So here we have the find one method. All these methods are available in the model class.